Bonjour à toutes et bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the three conveners for this wonderful conference. And I would like to thank you also, all the organizing local committee for this very challenging opportunity to go for me on a new topic. Haiti is not new for me, as you mentioned in your gentle introduction, but zombies are quite new for me. I'll try to explain first how I reached this point. Seeing the call for paper, Judith and Justine pushed me about talking about Haiti and zombies, because I have told them already stories about my trip in the countryside of Haiti, encountering stories, and not only stories about zombies. But I would like just to make one correction, and this is my mistake. The title that I would like to really embrace is the Asian figures of the migrant and the zombie, contrastive occupations of the life and death tensions in the media. Because today I will try something a little bit complicated for me. I will try to match discourse analysis, ethnographic studies, and aerial Asian studies about zombie, and of course try to be as much as possible into thanatic ethics. So my background is discourse studies, so mainly I try to grasp discourse in the media in Haiti and in France, but with a linguistic approach, with anthropological consideration. What I will try to say and to share with you is not only taking what is printed, in particular in Haiti, not without taking care of the readers, the writers, the journalists, and all the background. This is what is called in French, and I don't know if the translation is correct, a kind of implicated linguistics. Linguistique impliqué in terms of applied, appliqué, and engage, engagé. Implied on the ground and engage to fight against some stereotypes in general, but a broader discrimination. The pictures over there, just like Didier Fassin, I don't take much of my pictures. They are from the New York Times, a big documentary about the Asian border. But Haiti is 13 field trips for me, Dominican Republic 3, with a specific focus on the terrestrial border. As you can see, Haiti has this specialty, just like very few islands, to be divided in two parts, just like St. Martin's, Cyprus, and some others. And unfortunately, in most of the time, this is the center of a lot of attentions. And my research, just like part of Judith's research, was also about a massacre that happened in 1937. So looking at all of this, my initial hypothesis was, are migrants pictures as zombies in the media? And to do so, to try to answer to this question, I had my ethnographic journal with my observation at the border, but not necessarily writing about zombies and things like this. For the media, I used the Europress databases. For some of you may know, all the main French newspapers are inside. And the Nouvelliste is the oldest and main printed journal in Haiti on an everyday basis, mainly in French and a little bit in Haitian Creole. And at the end, for the talk of today, I tried to interview Asian journalists. For now, it's about 3 journalists, but I hope to make it bigger and have it, bigger. So zombies, you're all here this morning expecting to see, I don't know, maybe things like this. And when I was talking about my field trips, maybe you see myself as this. Sometimes people think I look like this actor, but I don't think so. And of course, this is not Haiti. Haiti for me much more looked like this. We have MOUs with universities. We try to have this academic cooperation. And on the field trips, this is a specific moment, just like this celebration of November 1st, the All Saints, particularly important in the Voodoo religion. So today I will have 3 times, and I hope this contextualization won't be too long, but I had so many things that I wanted to share with you about zombies in Haiti, because there is this specificity of how zombies are pictured in Haiti, in particular, considering the fact that they are coming from there in some way. And the Haitian migrations, to share with you what are the specificities of the migrations in Haiti, considering the fact that I'm not a geographer and I hope I won't say too many mistakes. And at the end, what I really wanted to look at is this paradoxical images in the 2 big medias. But I was in Oxford, and as a linguist, I couldn't help looking at Oxford English dictionary. So what are zombies? Mainly in English here. So I will go through it very, very, very quickly, and I will try to sum up. But very interestingly, the first meaning related to ghost, spirit, but to the Caribbean and to Haiti. Then you have the witchcraft part. You have the aspect of unresponsive, apathetic. I discover some specific Canadian military slang. And there is also a philosophical consideration. For some that are interested in night experience, there is also a cocktail called the zombie that Oxford English Dictionary considered important enough to put in its pages. And very interestingly, you have this extended and other uses that you can see in the word of finance and in computing. So in summary, when we use the term zombie in English, and I think I can say it as much in French, there is this a core element in terms of semantics. The origin from the Caribbean and particularly from Haiti, but they put a supposedly malevolent aspect that I didn't see so much in most of the text. They incorporate a soullessness and a relation to witchcraft. To a certain extent, you can relate it to voodoo, apathetic and unresponsive consideration, a lack of consciousness, and for the extended one, when you mention the voodoo, you are considering a failing aspect and an infected and malicious characteristic. This is for computing. There is also new elements that are not already in the Oxford English Dictionary. For example, I've seen zombie bacteria, and there are now zombie viruses that are qualified as zombie mostly because they are barely alive. So in that consideration, the zombieing or the zombial fact is the surviving and the in-between death and life. But let's go back to zombies in Haiti. Zombies in Haiti are written without the final E. This is really important because it is a recognition in the Française d'Haïti, Haitian French, of this Creole perspective. This is a painting from 1953 called The Three Zombies from Wilson Bigot. So zombies are here in Haiti, mostly in rural areas. They are considered according to at least 3 anthropological research that I've seen, as in the everyday life, to an extent of 1,000 to 1,500 official zombies in the country. But zombies have been more and more popular through movies, and in particular, the first one, The White Zombie from 1932. And there is also this trilogy from Romero from the late 50s, Night of the Living Dead. But this popularity of the zombie correspond to the US occupation of Haiti. Between 1915 and 1934, the US troops were in Haiti and Dominican Republic, and there were peacekeeping. We were not using this expression at that time, but occupying the island. But looking at the past, and I don't have enough time to develop this over here, the zombie aspect was also very important in the colonial period, very much related to slavery, where slaves themselves were zombifying other slaves to survive these horrible conditions and not to kill themselves. So they were sometimes zombifying someone else just not to let these people attend to his or her life. But zombies in Haiti, as I mentioned, anthropological researchers also look, for example, by Philippe Charlier, who distinguish 2 types of zombies: ritual zombies and criminal zombies. Just like you have the black magic and the white magic related to voodoo. So you can have considered positive and socially accepted zombies, the ritual ones. They are related to a kind of social justice through secret societies. The state is not very much present in Haiti. Very few school, very few police, very few justice. So if a community catch someone being a rapist or being someone committing crimes, they will ask for this secret society to convoke the person 7 times. If after 7 convocation and 7 explanation, this kind of tribunal is not happy with the answer, they will zombify the person. And there is also this criminal one. This is the stereotypical one, when there is a personal attempt to take over someone's life. So this is a kind of secretly poisoning, because of course there is some kind of magic in this zombie thing, but technically on a medical basis, it's a poisoning and a deterioration of the brain that will affect the person. So just to catch up very quick, what are Asian migration and how come we can see the relation with zombies in the representation? So 11 million Haitian on the island, 3.5 million abroad, with around 2 million from Asian descent in the US. If you look at the dynamic of Haitian migration, they are everywhere in the Caribbean, but mainly in Dominican Republic, because they share the same island. There is officially 500,000 Haitian living in Dominican Republic, but on an illegal aspect, much more than that. There is also a remark that I make with some colleagues. There are more Haitian students studying in Dominican Republic than Haitian students studying in Haiti itself. So a lot of reason to go abroad and to migrate. But migration was recently, between the last 10 years, much more modified related to some kind of agreement with countries. First was Brazil, and then it's Chile. So if you have an Asian passport, you can go to Chile without a visa. So there are tens of thousands of Asians that are flying to Chile, sometimes through Brazil, that are walking north all the way, mostly to the Haitian border, close to California or Texas. And you must have seen these terrible images from late September 2021, when thousands of migrants and mostly Haitians were stopped at the Texas border, and specifically the image on the right, where you see the police border on the horse with a whip. All of this, of course, reminding terrible times of segregation. So what I will mainly look at it is this transborder migration. This is absolutely not the same part of it. This is sometimes a day-by-day crossing of the border, this border in the middle of the island, with mainly activities in the sugarcane farms called bateis on the Dominican Republic part that are not present on the Asian side. This border is mainly mountains, high mountains on the Haitian part, with more flatland and grassland on the Dominican one. But there are specific markets that are, for most of them, financed by the European Union in Ouanaminthe, Bel-Ader, Malpasse, and Anse-à-Pitre, where mainly ladies, for the small one, once a week, for the big ones in Malpasse, every day, are crossing this border to sell goods that can be fruits or they can be tiny things. And this is their everyday activities. And this is where I have seen on each of these spots the same process. Dominicans early in the morning can access to the best parts of the market. They are under the shadows. They can sit in proper places. And the border control from the Dominican part opened the border later. So they come, they have not the best place to sit, very bad conditions. Most of the Asians are just walking the face down, not talking to each other, fearing the aggressivity of the Dominican border. So having this in mind, I was wondering what would be seen in the press. Nothing related zombies and migrants, nothing in the Asian press. So my first conclusion were the voiceless migrants are not dehumanized like a brainless or submissive representation close to a zombie. Only one in the French press, and this one is more like a anthropological, geographical reflection of the figure of the zombie, and the mention of Haiti and the crossing with the migrant is not necessarily significant. But I wanted still to see what's going on with Haiti and the zombies. So zombies are more and more popular in the Haitian broader culture. For example, last December, there was a documentary festival renamed Zombie. Sorry, the quotation mark should be just in between. Zombies, not Zombie Festival. A movie called Zombie Child in English and in French, same way with the same spelling, that was also at the Cannes Film Festival. They talk a lot about this in Haiti because it was something very important to have this positive representation, being in the most prestigious movie festival, with Haitian actresses and actors that are representing the country. Big aspect, 2018, the senator called Senatus was creating this change in the penal code, making officially recognized zombification of a crime. So zombification in Haiti can lead you to jail, and it's associated to murder. So a lot of interesting articles about should we integrate zombie in our penal code, because if you recognize officially zombies, we can discuss it later. Then there was a financial scandal called the zombie check scandal, le scandale des chèques zombies. So those zombie paychecks were a lot of money that was paid to civil servants that were sometimes already abroad, so no longer teaching or doing things for the state. For some others, just not working at all. And from the last part, being already dead. And the state was still sending the paycheck. For Haiti, it's a lot of money. It's about 600 million gourdes, the local money, but in fact, it's 5 million euros. Putting this in perspective, that show you how low can be the salary in Haiti, less than 100 euros for elementary school teacher per month. Then there was a scandal in 2016 about the zombie votes. The zombie votes were then also looked after by the European Union as untraceable votes. And finally, they find out that there was a use of unclean electoral registers of death, but the report makes no reference to it. So no zombie sign, because officially zombies are considered death, and there is a death certificate when you become a zombie in Haiti. And the last one I wanted to share with you, but I don't think I have enough time to read all of this. It's a kind of, I don't know how to call it in English, but small text about modern zombies. Modern zombies in Haiti are, according to that journalist, everywhere. They're looked down, they don't talk to anyone. And these modern zombies are one thing, they have a mobile phone in hands. So you probably have seen all of us walking down the street, down the hands with this. So this is also one aspect of the zombification over there. So in conclusion, in Haiti, migrant does not equal zombie. Zombie is, of course, a passive state, and migrant is seen as an active one. Migration is an active result, is mainly painted as a result, and zombification is a negative action towards someone. I couldn't find the quote again, but a Bokor, so a voodoo priest said, Haitians are not afraid of zombies, they are afraid of being zombified. So you can live around zombies, you're just afraid to become one. So in the final conclusion, I would say that there is a vivid lexical dynamic of zombie to refer to new practices. Where zombies are mentioned in Haiti, we would see more often the ghost metaphor in France. And migrants figures are still speechless, but they remain with their brain, and hopefully we hope they will have their dignity kept in the media. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was a very good and compelling comparison between migrants and zombies. I would now like to introduce Siobhán McGuirk, who's going to talk about spectres, spectacles, and the true optimism of the walk. She is an interdisciplinary scholar based at Goldsmith University in London. She is, and that's very exciting for us, a filmmaker, a curator, besides being an academic, and her work addresses issues of migration, gender, sexuality, and the material cultural aspect of activism. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm going to present an emerging analysis of a performance called The Walk, and it's one that I want to situate really in conversation with all the incredible, incisive and insightful and provocative presentations that we've had over the past few days. So there'll be many references I hope that and I feel will speak back to and hopefully forward to things to come. So against the backdrop of an increasingly and openly hostile environment towards people migrating to Europe and the rapidly shifting legislative environment in post-Brexit Britain, the theatrical companies Good Chance and Handspring, who I think are going to appear in the next paper as well, presented a really ambitious performance of interactive puppetry, we could say, called The Walk. And this project ran between July and November 2021 with the backing of Manchester International Festival and really hundreds of other local and community-based organisations spread all the way across Europe. And at the centre of this performance, at the centre of The Walk, is a giant puppet named Little Amal, described by the makers as a quote, 3.5 metre tall living artwork of a young Syrian refugee child, that's the end of the quote, who was controlled by a rotating team of volunteers working 3 people at a time to walk her over 8,000 kilometres from the Syrian-Turkey border where she started, all the way across Europe to the UK. And she was designed, and again, this is a quote, to focus attention on the urgent needs of young refugees. And I think the best way to really give you a taste of what this performance was like was to show you a promotional video, but with fear that that PowerPoint might crash, we're going to do a quick changeover of what I am sharing here. So where are my meeting controls? Share. I think it's showing, but it's on this screen, not that one. Yeah, please. Just go to the show. Okay. Great, that was meant to speed things up, but I'm not quite convinced it did. But that should give you a good insight to what the walk was like, and also how it was promoted, right? So that's a really important part of it, how not only what happened, but also how the makers wanted it to be seen. And here is some highlighted text from the web page that the landing page of the website. Important to note here that the website is available in all of the languages of the different countries that Arnaud passed through, including Arabic. And I just wanted to highlight here from this description this emphasis on representing all displaced children, and the framing as a cultural odyssey transcending borders, politics and language to tell a new story of shared humanity and to ensure that the world doesn't forget the millions of displaced children. And just in addition to that, the artistic director of the walk, Amir Nuabi, explained its purpose as, quote, "It is because the attention of the world is elsewhere right now," and that's a reference to the coronavirus pandemic, "that it is more important than ever to reignite the conversation about the refugee crisis and to change the narrative around it. The purpose of the walk is to highlight the potential of the refugee, not just their dire circumstances. Little Amel is 3.5 meters tall because we want the world to grow big enough to greet her. We want her to inspire us to think big and act bigger." And so this is really a huge project with so many partners, and there's many different strands that we could pull out today and talk about. The performance itself, in which people were encouraged to join, as we saw in the video, but also the documentation of it via social media, which people further afield were encouraged to engage with and look at. There was also an interactive app, and later a storybook, an interactive storybook, and another publication detailing how the whole project came together. So there's a lot of kind of supplementary and additional media around this project. But today I'm going to focus on the performance and the app in my presentation of a critical reading of the walk. And as I said, this is emerging research, and I'm excited to hear your feedback and thoughts, and a bit of departure from my usual anthropological work with people seeking asylum. Specifically here, I want to talk about the spectacle and narrative of the walk, considering the highly political stance, despite the makers' claim to kind of transcend politics, that the piece represents, and to offer a critique of empathy following Andrea Timmer, Ida Daywad, Serpil and Lauren Ballant, to suggest that the hope of the walk, the hope of Amel, can be understood as a form of doubly cruel optimism. And I close with the reframing of Little Amel as a spectre, not a spectacle, of displaced children greeted by the cruelty of Fortress Europe. So this narrative that the makers frame the walk as a new story, but in fact I think it's one that we can recognize as both very familiar and very old, as the evocation of Odyssey, the Odyssey suggests in the opening remarks. The figure of Amel is broadly sketched. We don't know her surname. We only know that she was separated from her mother, who she sets out in search of on a journey that takes her across Turkey, Greece, Italy, France, Switzerland, Germany, Belgium, and the UK. So a particular route across Europe. And along the way, as we saw, she meets she's greeted by the huge communities that are the consequence of incredible efforts made to organize lots of different community events. And these were heavily advertised and well attended. And during those things, she didn't just pass through, there was interactions on the basis of playing hide and seek, having an English language lesson, having different language lessons in different places, playing games, being taught instruments, dancing, was helped when she felt lost or afraid, was given guided tours. She was welcomed by other puppets, including a grandmother in Italy. And attends like kind of lots of cultural integration classes and centers. So really this was an intentional interaction with lots of local level groups, frequently with children, and frequently producing other artistic outcomes as part of that, which is very well documented on the website. There's other people that she does not meet along the way, right? So along the way, Amel does not encounter border guards. She is not held back in detention. She's not interrogated. She does not have to replan her route. Her route is scheduled ahead of time, is linear, from a particular location to a particular destination that has set mark points along the way. She knows where she's going and is not forced to turn back or reroute or reconsider. And in some ways, I think that this can be regarded as a magical thinking, right? This hopeful, optimistic view of the better world that we hope for made real. But as we will see, this framing does not hold together for very long. It doesn't hold together against the realities that Arnaud did encounter, nor does it hold together against the narrative choices that the makers make in their supplementary media that fleshes out the whole little Arnaud story. So I would suggest in any case, and I don't think this is a particularly shocking insight, in any case, the story isn't really about Arnaud, right? The walk's main aim is to explicitly change the conversation, and as such, the target audience are the people, the citizens of Europe, presumed to be already engaged in that conversation about migration. And although many of her interactions are with children, it is adults that are interpolated as able to change that conversation, right? And this this constituency is more than an intended audience. They're also the active participants in the play, right? And we know this because the coverage is only about Arnaud in relation to other people, right? And so we see these this framed in the promotional video as the question, the one question is, how will you welcome her, right? So the focus of the story is not Arnaud, it is you. You the interactor, you the participant, you the viewer, and so on. And so not only are the audience participants, not only are European people the audience participants, but they're also in fact the protagonists of the walk. And really they provide the drama. There is no possibility of failure with this plan, maybe a technical delay, but nothing more than that. The only suspense and indeed drama that comes from this performance is the question of if and how the spectators respond. And we see this in the news coverage of the walk, right? And so it's always about how did people respond, and that includes the not always positive reception. And this is perhaps less surprising. Why is it surprising that there was negative reactions, right? Given what we know about Europe, but also given what the makers claim to know in saying that they want to change the conversation, right? So how is this surprising? Why is this framed as surprising? And so these are just headlines from The Guardian and New York Times about reactions in Meteora, that in Greece, where they voted to ban Arnaud from coming through, and people in Larissa threw stones. Actually, maybe more interesting this is from the video about what happened in Greece, where we see the police and the puppeteer says on the walks we've had to be well protected by the police because of everything that happened. So the police actually are brought in Greece to protect little Arnaud from the citizens who are attacking her. And then we see this is also from the same promo video. This is Arnaud being given a police escort onto the boat that will take her across the Aegean Sea, right? So there's a lot that we could tease out here already, but I want to kind of switch attention quickly to the interactive act that accompanies the walk, because there's a lot more there, a lot more kind of flesh put on the bones of this narrative. Okay, so this is Little Arnaud, the interactive journey. And this is indicative of many other kind of interactive narratives and media that are emerging around migration. Médecins Sans Frontières did their own kind of virtual reality experience of a refugee camp. It speaks to these ideas of walking in the shoes, a very, very popular narrative, particularly in children's literature. And so this is kind of situated in a broader genre. So this is this is the opening. This is the one and only time that Arnaud ever speaks. She speaks to say, hello, I'm Arnaud and I'm 9. That's it. She doesn't speak in her puppet form or in the interactive journey again, apart from one exception, which we'll see. So next one. And we're meeting her at the beginning of her journey with this photo of the mother that she cannot find locally as her playground is hit by bombs. And from this point, you, the viewer, help her along the way. You identify a pathway to crawl over rubble. Here you shake the tree so that she can have some apples. Here you physically, even though she's standing in front of the water fountain with a cup at her hand, you have to move it for her to fill it with water. So you're literally the person who is feeding her, watering her, in this case, sheltering her, building a shelter around her in the rain, after which she can have pleasant dreams. And also, of course, helping her to assimilate by teaching her some local languages. Notably, there is one scene where Amal encounters a refugee camp and she asks people there for help finding her mothers. The response she is given, as you can see here, is a shrug, right? So other refugees cannot help her. They do not help her. They do not feed her, clothe her, etc. They shrug. And so Amal is completely reliant on you, the player, the game player. Now, there's potential here for this to become a complicity, right? And so in this case, she encounters a boat, and you can see from the little hand, you're being given the instruction there to pull the boat, to start the boat. And moreover, you then play a game, an interactive game, where you, as Amal, steer the boat. You have to steer it to avoid rocks. This is a very kind of shocking and evocative game, but if you hit the rock, it's okay, you can start again. Note that Amal has her hand on the tiller, so she's controlling the boat, you're controlling the boat. But also note that, and this is something that is illegal, right? If Amal was encountered doing this, she would be a trafficker. She would be seen as the person controlling the boat and would therefore be subject to criminal charges. Note also that Amal is the only person that you can see here. The suggestion is that she is with other people, but they are unseen, they are faceless, they are a physical mass, in fact, one group covered by this tarpaulin. When she finally comes to the UK, she in fact swims the channel, and you help her here by getting this by putting out a little life jacket that she can take from a buoy, and then she swims over the rest of the channel. So that's the White Cliffs of Dover in the background that she arrives to. When she arrives on the beach, there is no one else there to greet her. But when she does finally arrive in the UK, we see something in London when she arrives, something that really, again, kind of as I said before, bursts this idea that this is a magical realist portrayal, right? That this is a wonderful, hopeful imaginary, because she encounters a refugees go home rally, right? So the opponents of refugees and the opponents of migrants are suddenly present in central London. Here you are asked, and you have the ability to start a camera, so start the news report, layering on this idea of surveillance that has been kind of an undercurrent throughout, that we're watching her moving across the map, we're documenting where she goes, how she goes. And so you start the camera, and you find that the news is saying immigration numbers climb, and Amal is very shocked and upset, but, oh, this has gone too far. But as she looks from right to left, or left to right maybe, as she turns her head, she sees there's a counter protest of people who are saying refugees are welcome, human rights for all. And so this is the point at which you, the game player, can maybe see themselves as on one side of a debate, if this had been kind of unclear to you thus far. And the suggestion is here that torn between these two realities, the one that wins out, the one that that Amal encounters, is the one that says welcome. And in fact, it then jumps very quickly. So we do not see Amal, this oversized puppet, be subjected to an age assessment test or anything like that, is not put in any kind of refugee housing that would undoubtedly happen in the UK. We jump forward in time for the closing in this kind of Mancunian household with lovely British scenery, you know, a fireplace, like this particular fireplace, particular wallpaper. And as we zoom in, and this is not me zooming in, this is the app zooms in to see little Amal, not so little anymore, right? This future picture of Amal here. So who is Arnaud? Who can we take away from this is Arnaud? Well, she is, as we've told, an unaccompanied child. We're told that her mother, she's looking for her mother. Note that her father is absent. In the two photos that we see of the family, there is no father. She's not looking for her father. She is a child, emphasized by the word little. She is from Syria, which means, and we see her, we assertively see her in a moment of trauma and war. There is no doubt that she is a refugee. There is no question over her origin. She's very, very pale skin and has a proximity to whiteness that is only emphasized by the majority of her puppeteers being white European citizens themselves, but not all of them, and I'll come to that in a second. Note that despite her mother being hijabi, being a hijab-wearing Muslim, sorry you can't see it very well, but in the graduation picture, the adult Arnaud does not become a hijab-wearing a Muslim, right? So there's some, I think there's an undercurrent there that we can think critically about in terms of assimilation and in terms of acceptable sympathetic characters. She's always friendly, welcoming, innocent, wondrous, but expressionless in her puppet form. She has potential. This is underscored and confirmed by the fact that she graduates with her degree, right? So she's going to be a good, productive member of society, an exceptional individual. She is speechless, as I've emphasized, and we can connect that to Malky, Rancière, so many insights onto the kind of the refugee that doesn't speak. But she is adaptable and willing and happy to integrate. So reflective of Sarah Ahmed's happy immigrant, the grateful immigrant. Otherwise, she's anonymous. And what we do know about her is that she is needy. Not desperate, but clearly in need. And that's a quality that Arnaud must reflect, I would argue, in order to be considered and received as what Andrea Timmer identifies as a sympathy-deserving human. And so in those ways, we can start thinking about who Arnaud is not, right? So this representation of all displaced people is not actually many displaced people. And so this is one artwork that's made in response to Arnaud, this idea, we are all Arnaud. Well, Arnaud is not an adult. She is not male. She is not Black. She's not someone who has a kind of questionable deservingness to be seen as a refugee. And I think important here to think of Arnaud in the context of 2021 and as someone who is quite far after this refugee crisis that's evoked by the makers, but very close to another story of a channel crossing in which a young boy from Sudan tried to cross the channel and drowned, sadly drowned. This is a particularly important story because this story fell from the news media once questions about his true age began to come to the surface. So generating a lot of headlines when he was a 16-year-old and when there was some questions raised about whether he might in fact be a 29-year-old man, he fell out of the news cycle. And so I want to kind of close by thinking about Little Arnaud as an example of cruel optimism, which is Laurent Ballant's very influential theory. And I want to use this framework to consider both the optimism that is felt by the spectator participant about themselves and their own ability to not only live a good life, not the good life that Ballant talks about, but a good ethical life in terms of their altruism and that of their communities, but also the optimism that is felt for Arnaud and projected onto her, that she will succeed, she will be happy, she will get her degree. And so this is a departure and in fact an extension of Ballant's concept suggests that this optimism of the spectator savior is doubly cruel, indeed multiply cruel, insofar as it prevents both those individuals from attaining the reality they dream of for themselves. It prevents the changes necessary for that altruism to change the politics of Europe, but it also prevents the better life emerging for those very real children and adult refugees suffering and dying at the hands of Fortress Europe, right? And this cruelty is not unknown. So if we return to the artistic director's explanation of his work, he says the purpose is to highlight the potential of the refugee, not just their dire circumstances. So recognition of the dire circumstances while still claiming to be detached from them. And this framing of hope and kindness as non-political. and I'm just going to highlight, this is a long quote, so I've just highlighted a few parts of it from Ida Dynaway, who's been mentioned a few times. And I think that kind of adds into this framework of cruel optimism. And elsewhere, and so to really highlight this kind of I think the very provocative intervention that it reproduces rather than challenges the foundational assumptions of the far right, right? And this is what we see in that question of who Armel is not, right? And who Armel is, and this idea of the construction of the deserving refugee. Dana says that it's dead migrants in particular through which the good European can be constructed or self-reflected. That is, in the quote, with sentimental stories of innocent children washed up on shores and with mothers who drown while giving birth. That is, with bodies that cannot speak back. Now, although Armel is living, is not dead, she's very much embedded in the idea of children that like Alan Kurdi, most famously, and others who kind of evoked this idea of children suffering in refugee crisis in Europe. And so we can think about this spectacle really as something else, and I want to suggest as spectres, as the audience looks through Armel to see each other's, right? This ghostly figure. And so this is not intended by the makers, but I think emerged from the same context. So we can look at Armel and say this unspeaking observer, the child that never ages, the figure who transcends borders unseen, never stopped by border control that she passes through, who looms large over European citizens, at which Europeans look at her, but only through her to see their communities reflecting themselves back at them. She's hyper visible, but invisible, a spectre of the cruel optimism and cruel border regimes that characterize Europe, a ghost of those who have died and of those who are not yet dead. And I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very thoughtful presentation on Amal and hope and the ambivalence behind it. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, Marianne, who is a lecturer in English Studies at the University of Calais and Montpellier as well. Her research focuses on politically committed British playwrights from the 19th century to the present day. She has published widely on,
Don't say everything.
the Austrian world, but Beckett, Tom Stoppard. She's very much involved in translation and translating works by Tom Stoppard, but also more documentaries. The word is to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this wonderful conference. As you just heard, I'm not a specialist of migration, and I've learned a lot over the past 2 days. My paper, just like yours, will echo many of the things that have been said better by others already. And as an answer to Didier Fassin's keynote address on Wednesday, who extended the metaphor of a theatre to talk of immigration policies, I will try to analyze how theatre can represent and symbolize the reality of death in migration. I'm unfortunately relying on secondhand accounts of the 2 plays that I will analyze today, as I have so far seen neither, but I have talked with some of you who have seen The Jungle, so do not hesitate to correct me if what I infer from the reviews, videos, and photographs, obviously the texts which have been published, is not what you have experienced as a spectator. So first of all, I'll present the 2 works. And starting with The Jungle, which was first presented at the Young Vic in December 2017 in a co-production by the National Theatre and the Young Vic, which are both established and mainstream theatres. in association with Good Chance Theatre, which on the contrary has its roots in quicksand, let's say. So Good Chance Theatre was founded by playwrights Joe Robertson and Joe Murphy, who established their first temporary theatre of hope on the left-hand side here, a 12-meter geodesic dome in the heart of the Calais jungle in 2015. Over 7 months, it welcomed thousands of refugees, artists, and volunteers into the space. They had a program of workshops for migrants as well as local people. On their website, they explain their work with, that they work with people who are seeking sanctuary as asylum seekers, refugees, and migrants to create theatre, art, music, dance, poetry, but also to share lunch and friendship. And quote, "The space is owned and shaped collectively by all. It is a place for discovery, for connection, for understanding, for celebration." So all the keywords are there. The Jungle was their first play, but now they have a company, La Troupe, which is set in Paris, and indeed their latest production is Little Amal. What is interesting is that Little Amal is already one of the characters in the Jungle, so there's kind of connection in this world of fiction that they created. So the Jungle tells stories of loss. Again, this is a quotation from their website. Tells stories of loss, fear, community, and hope of the Calais camp's creation and of its eventual destruction. It is often presented as an immersive play, and certainly the dome, which you see on the left here, was an immersive space with no separation between spectators and artists. On the stage of the young Vic on the right, the audience is invited to partake of a meal, but they are on a different level. And I thought it was interesting to compare the two spaces. Salt is the other play that I'm going to talk about today. It was first performed in London in July 2017, so the same year, with Selina Thompson, its author, alone on stage, playing a fictional version of herself as the woman in the text. The role was afterwards taken over by Rochelle Rose, whom you see on the right at the Royal Court. The space, as you see it here, is more traditional with the symbolic separation of the proscenium arch, though, as I will show, the play is also participatory and inclusive. This dialectic of separation and inclusion between practitioners and spectators is one of several tensions at the heart of those two plays, which are about the edge, and on the edge, the separation, the liminality, the limit between two worlds, that of the living and that of the dead, that of reality and that of fiction, that of them and that of us. To sum up the plots, The Jungle gives voice to the migrants who try to survive at the limit of what they see as the promised land, Britain, trying every day, several times a day, to cross the channel and constantly risking their lives. Salt is the journey of a woman back in space and time to her ancestors, slaves who themselves had to cross the ocean, were tortured, starved, and murdered. She gives voice to them and partakes of their suffering, offering a ritual for the spectators to acknowledge and remember those ghosts who accompany her. So you see that those summaries echo on many counts the definition of a liminality according to the OED. I've got the same reflect, obviously. So liminality according to the OED is this transitional or indeterminate state between culturally defined stages of a person's life. Specifically, such a state occupied during a ritual or a rite of passage, characterized by a sense of solidarity between participants. I'd like to comment just on this last part of this definition, as this sense of solidarity is linked to the concept of communitas, this strong sense of solidarity and bonding that develops among people experiencing a ritual, a rite of passage, or other transitional state together. So not only do both works deal with liminal spaces and times in migrants' itineraries of life, they're also rituals in themselves. And in celebrating those rites of passage, the plays celebrate a new community, bonding spectators and actors for the time of the performance and beyond. I'm going to focus on three aspects, which are as many perspectives from which to look at liminality. And I've added the names of philosophers, theoreticians, and academics whose work guided my reflection. So first, theatre as a ghostly presence, where the dead haunt the living. with Marvin Carlson's work, The Haunted Stage, the theory as a memory machine, the theater as memory machine as a reference. Theater as a heterotopia, obviously taking Michel Foucault's concept and being helped by Michel de Certeau on the way. And finally, the mythopoetics of theater of migration. And I'm here indebted to Emma Cox's study in a little book, which is entitled Theater and Migration, which was really very interesting. So first of all, this idea of theater as a ghostly presence. The two plays explore two ways to turn migrants into characters, either by rehumanizing them or by bringing them back to life. So I'm going obviously to summarize and go as quick as possible, but starting with rehumanizing, theater of migration is politically committed to giving voice to the outcast, the ostracized, the silent. And the process aims at rehumanizing the migrants, picturing them not as a mass of invaders, but as individuals that the spectators may relate to and empathize with. This is most obvious in The Jungle, whose cast is partly professional and partly composed of migrants who were discovered in the jungle. Not only were they put center stage, but when the play, interestingly, was transferred to New York, some of them found themselves caught up in Trump's travel ban, and the British government had to expedite their citizenship, so actually giving them an identity. The text itself is also about individual stories, personal itineraries, and tellingly, the play opens as the inhabitants of the jungle are conducting a census to name all refugees, while at the same time the CRS, wearing body armor, that is a mask hiding their faces, are seen as an anonymous mass that attacks them indiscriminately. This is my first quotation. This reversal of perspective is representative of the theatre committed to moving away from the usual position of power and privilege of the spectators. And obviously this is easier when the play is performed in the jungle than it is at the Young Vic. And I'm here echoing Majid Adin's words, who said he was more likely to exhibit his work in the jungle rather than at the Tate Modern, or at least he would have a different spectatorship. The playwright and actors aim at bridging the gap, reconnecting. This is also what theatre makes possible. You can swap roles, change perspectives, travel in time, in space, but also between identities. The second aspect I wanted to emphasize here was bringing back to life, which is really the case in Salt. Theatre, a live and direct experience, is also able to bring history back to the present. And when it deals with migration, it can conjure up the dead, bring them back to life in an eternal present. This is the case, as I said, with Selina Thompson, who constantly repeats that time accumulates, who constantly uses all kinds of repetitions to emphasize the circularity of time, which is not linear but cyclical, not historical but mythical. The woman is going back and forth through time. I'm quoting the text. And a longer quotation, it is a time travel. Sometimes I stand at the bus stop and I think about the violence that is in my ancestry, the violence embedded in our lives, and the world shimmers and then melts away, and all that is left is suffering. So time travel leads to timelessness, interestingly. There's no precise time reference, no date, and the body of the woman turns into a palimpsest through which we can look at her ancestors. While the ritual of Salt sticks to the present, it's interesting to notice that time in the jungle goes backwards. The play opens with the discovery that Nurullah, a 15-year-old boy, died on the motorway while trying to jump on a truck. And at the end of that scene, one of the characters announces that they will tell the story now from the beginning. That is, all the rest of the play is an analepsis, and Nurullah magically is brought back to life. Similarly, when the migrants share their experience and talk of their own death, they talk of it in the present constantly. So it's just one quote here: "I'm dead." What? Dead. You're not dead, you're here with me. A refugee dies many times. So both plays are peopled with ghosts, and perhaps this liminal situation in between life and death, stuck in the timeless present, is best epitomized by Thompson's beautifully poetic rhyme, the hold, womb, tomb, bowel. So not only are we stuck in time with her, we're also stuck in space, in that hold, in that prison cell, in that migrant camp. And this leads me to my second part, which is about space, theater as a transitional space, a heterotopia. And I'm here taking up Foucault's theory of heterotopia, and he sees theater as one of those heterotopias, that is, spaces or places that are liminal, self-sufficient. I'm quoting him here. Actually, I'm the one who translated him because I couldn't find the text in English. So heterotopias are spaces where real places, all other real places that one can find in culture, are represented at the same time, are contested and are reversed. They're spaces that are outside all spaces. Here you can see that there are two words referring to space. One is space and the other is place. And I'm also drawing from Michel de Certeau's The Practice of Everyday Life, which was quoted yesterday also, in which he distinguishes between place as physical environment and space as it is defined by human practices, relations and perceptions. So that in the end, it is in spaces, as de Certeau defines them, that migrants become outcasts and strangers. In the jungle, the camp, which serves as a real as well as a fictional scenery for the play, is itself a heterotopia. It's a place where one can travel from country to country in a few minutes, as is demonstrated here by one of the characters. I'm going to read just a few extracts from that long quote. When does a place become a place? By November in the jungle, I could walk from Sudan through Palestine and Syria, pop into a Pakistani cafe on Oxford Street near Egypt, through Somalia, Eritrea, Kuwait, David Cameron's Avenue, François Hollande Street, Salah's restaurant in Afghanistan. When does a place become a home? More specifically, the play is indeed set in Salah's restaurant, another heterotopia where spectators and actors, asylum seekers and legal citizens can mix and share a meal. But this re-territorialization of the wasteland at the edge of Calais turns out to be just another kind of prison, a place in between where one waits for life on the other side of the channel or death on the journey. And the final quotation is quite telling here. I thought this was a place, but it's not. It's between places. It doesn't exist. We're in Bezac, purgatory, waiting on the judgment. Insult the Woman is a priestess who conjures up images of all the places she has traveled by describing them, standing on an almost bare stage and surrounded by symbolic objects. I've shown you pictures at the beginning. So symbolism is also to be found in, what is interesting is that the symbolism is also to be found in the places that she describes, not only in the objects that surround her. All those places are passages, gates. For instance, Elmina Castle, which is described as the place where you have to go through the door of no return into the middle passage. She talks of the hold before the hold. I'm just quoting the text here. She travels on a cargo for weeks. She is stuck at the airport. So all those spaces are as many points of passage as an allegory of migration, or rather an allegory of the impossibility to reach one's destination, constantly trying to move on and being stuck. Meeting three gatekeepers or coast guards or border patrols that migrants, slaves, and the woman on stage have to pass. Moreover, both plays also offer a meta-theatrical treatment of space, which becomes kaleidoscopic in the process. The dome in the jungle is a space separated from the rest of the camp. It's an island, if you want. And In Salt, the woman describes the Skype calls that she makes with her parents as a screen inside or within another screen. She says, their room in my room in Jamaica, the sea and the sound of their little electric heater mingled together. Moreover, in that play, real and fictional spaces and places mix. So she talks of Jamaica and Ghana are as always places at the same time real, imagined, and imaginary. Indeed, both plays, though partly documentary, that is very realistic, are also definitely works of fiction which drag the spectators in a mythical version of reality where they are included in a community with the actors or characters on stage. And this is my third and final part. That is this idea of theatre as a ritual which helps reforming the community through mythopoetics. So here Emma Cox came in as a very, very interesting reference. She says, or she writes, as well as the obvious functions of giving voice or speaking for asylum seekers and refugees, theatre and performance that engage with contentious asylum politics can serve the interests of citizens in as much as they demarcate an alternative imagined community being an echo of Benedict Anderson's theory. She also writes, the act of making theatre is the act of recognizing, affirming, extending, imagining, and reaffirming a community or possibly communities. Metaphorically at first, and then literally and tangibly, theatre is the creation of newly shared space on earth. Both plays, though they are factual, almost documentary, are also metaphorical, making myth out of migration. And to take up Cox's words, they create a mythopoetics of migration, as I'll show very quickly. So in Salt, the play presents itself as a ritual. The term constantly appears in the stage directions to honor the dead. The set is symbolical. For instance, this 3 fluorescent strip lights that represent the triangle of the slave trade. There is incense burning, libations. The text of the woman is a chant with anaphoras. Some lines come back like a chorus, an incantation. One of them is, Europe pushes me, I push back. It generalizes through gnomic tenses and indefinite articles. It depersonalizes through passive structures and anonymity. It also navigates a thin line between realism and myth, reality, fiction, and dream. The woman is herself a liminal being, always on the edge, always in between. This is how she describes herself. 2 halves of who I am, a body that works, educated in white institutions, and a body that feels nurtured in black homes, smashed together like tectonic plates. But this position at the edge allows her to unite with the audience, and this communal feeling is made visible through the protective goggles that she asks members of the audience to don at the same time as her when she prepares to smash the salt rock with a hammer. So they have the same costume. The woman is surrounded by them, comforted by their presence. They act as a sort of protective shell. At the end of the play, this new community is united materially as the woman entrusts each spectator with a piece of salt to bring home, keep safe, as a symbol of commitment. This is a quotation from the very last page of the book. To take it is to make a commitment to live, a commitment to the radical space of not moving on and all that it can open. This is Selina's grief entrusted to me so that the task of carrying it might be communal. In the jungle, the set is this Afghan restaurant. So it's at the same time naturalistic and symbolical, a place where you share bread. It is a place of communion where people meet, sing, share stories of great journeys, stories of hope. I'm quoting the text again. So it's also about storytelling. Reaching my conclusion, I promise. Throughout the play, we can hear people talking in many different languages, and the jungle turns into a Tower of Babel. What is also interesting is the names of the place, which are symbolical and mythical. So the jungle is, well, the jungle, and it's also Sangat, which is called Zangal, a Pashto word which means forest. And at times this play, which never shies of telling the truth about the terrible plight of migrants, seems to be set in a modern version of the Forest of Varden. In the end, what I find most striking in those two very different plays is the fact that both are poised in a precarious because liminal position between realism and symbolism, as if resorting to a mythified version of fiction could help imagining a way out of a terribly real situation that echoes yesterday's keynote speaker, I hope. Thank you.